Live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and our website at impactus.org. I'm Dean Brenton, president at Impactus Promise Keepers Canada, and I'm really excited to be with you tonight. I'm even more excited that you're going to get the chance to hear from the legend himself, Kirk Giles. He is going to be discussing life hacks for husbands, for dads and dads-to-be. Life can change drastically when kids come along, and especially our marriages. And so understanding these changes that take place is really essential for recalibrating our relationship with our wives. So the questions we're going to look at tonight are: how can we build a great marriage at the same time that we're raising our kids? And how can you rebuild your marriage as your kids grow older? And that's a part of my life. And so I'm looking forward to this talk as well. So tonight we're going to address these questions and others that will equip you as a husband to be better equipped and prepared for when kids come along and you have to make those adjustments that can make a significant impact and difference in your marriage. Now, some of you on this live stream may not be familiar with us at all, and we want you to know that we're a men's ministry focused on equipping men for a life of purpose and godly impact. We are reaching men globally in a digital world at impactus.org, and please go over there and check it out and see some of the resources that we have that are geared and designed to address the challenges and the questions that men face. For those of you that do know us, I do want to say welcome. We're really glad that you're with us. And if you're watching on Facebook, why don't you share it and start a watch party, send some comments along, send someone a text, invite them out to this thing. If you know of a friend who could use this kind of content, then invite them into this conversation tonight. And we're going to get a chance to have some Q&A at the end. But first of all, we're going to hear from Kirk. And so if you don't know who Kirk Giles is, well, he was the previous president of Promise Keepers Canada Impactus, and currently he is in a new role. But Kirk's a husband, he's a father, he's a pastor who's been married for over 25 years. He has 4 adult children, and he has a long time experience ministering to men. He has a huge passion for helping men become wholehearted followers of Jesus in their everyday lives. And I'm privileged to call him a friend tonight. And we're really delighted to have him back with us. So I'd like to introduce you to Kirk Giles. And welcome, Kirk.
Hey, Dean. Good to see you, man.
You too. It's really good to have you on board, and I hope you don't lose power.
I need to talk to you about that legend word, though, because that makes me feel like a real old timer or something. We got to work on that part of the bio.
I will just let you interpret that as you need. But we are delighted, Kirk, that you're with us. You've served this ministry for so many years so well, and I'm honored to get the chance to host you and turn the stage over to you, as it were, to share on this really important topic. And so the stage is yours, the platform is yours, so all yours tonight. Share your heart, and we're looking forward to this.
Great. Thank you so much. I am so thrilled to be with you guys tonight. For those of you who don't know me, it has just been such an honor for over 20 years of my life to be invested in this ministry. And so to be back tonight, connecting with you guys online in this way and talking about a topic that I love to talk about, I'm just honored and blessed, and want to say thank you for taking time out of your schedules to be part of this conversation we're going to have tonight. When I first wrote this talk, my text for this talk actually had 666 words on it. And I texted some of the staff at the office and I said, I have 666 words. Should I keep that or change it? They suggested I add a few more words to the talk. So I added a few more words. So we should be okay tonight, God willing. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, guys. And we're going to talk about marriage. We're going to talk about how to deal with kids in marriage. And how do you build a great marriage while you're trying to raise kids and be a great dad at the same time? Because I know that if you're watching this and you are a dad or you're expecting to be a dad, you love to be a dad. You want to be a success as a father, but you also want to be a success as a husband. And so hopefully tonight we're going to be able to just have some real practical steps and understand what the Bible has to say to us about this area of our life. In all the years that I've worked with men, I think there are 2 huge mistakes that I have seen men make when it comes to marriage and their kids. And they kind of land on either extreme. On one extreme, are guys who make the decision that everything is going to be about their kids. And so what they'll do is they'll plan their schedules, they'll plan their energy, their budget, everything around how do we keep our kids happy? How do we keep our kids active? How do we make sure that our kids have every opportunity to thrive? And that's a good thing that you want your kids to thrive, but you can go overboard and make all of life about your kids. Did you know that for couples who are in their 50s or older, divorce rates have doubled for those couples since the 1990s? What we're seeing is the reality of, as couples move towards being empty nesters, couples who have made their marriage all about their kids suddenly find themselves at a stage of life where they don't even know each other anymore, because all of their energy went into investing into their kids' lives. And so too often couples end up going down the path of divorce because there is no connection with each other anymore. The other extreme that happens for couples is, and for men in particular, is we become really selfish. And by that, I mean, we have to understand that when kids come along, you are no longer the center of the universe. Like, you're important to your wife, but you're not that important anymore. Everything changes when kids come along. And if you're already a dad, you know this, you feel this and experience it. Everything from hanging out together to sex, to being able to even have the same sleep schedule sometimes. Everything changes when you have kids. And too often, men become selfish because we live in a space where we go, what about me? What about my needs? What about my desires? Where am I in all of this? How come I'm no longer the priority? And so sometimes we get angry. Sometimes we just decide to work more hours and longer hours. We do all kinds of things to try to just stay in some sense of control in our relationship. And when you have either extreme, where everything is about the kids, or you live in a space where you're selfish, you forget about your marriage because you're living on these edges on either side. My own personal story is that I got selfish when our kids started to come along. I failed to see how having our kids hanging off of my wife all day long would impact any desire she would have for me to even give her a hug, or for us to spend time together, that she would just be exhausted at the end of the day. And I failed to see how those things were impacting her life. I just saw it through my own eyes of saying, well, what about me? What about my needs and my desires? And so we want to be very careful that we don't live on either of those extremes, where men have failed too often and hurt their marriage when it came to raising kids and trying to build a marriage. Why is this so important, though? Like, why is it important we get this right? Because God's desire for your marriage is way greater than you can even imagine. In the Bible, when God created marriage, in Genesis chapter 2, he uses these words. He says, a man will leave his father and mother, and the two will become one flesh. And this idea of becoming one flesh is an incredible spiritual picture that God created marriage, for our benefit, but there's so much more he created marriage for. He has an eternal picture in mind for us with marriage. And so marriage, the New Testament tells us that marriage is a picture of Jesus and the church. And marriage is also a picture of what God himself is like as the Trinity. That word one, for one flesh, that God's vision is that for you and your wife, that you would be completely one, spiritually, emotionally, physically. You would be completely one. Two different people combined together as one. And it's the same word that's used later on in the book of Deuteronomy, where it says, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. When we think of the Trinity, that God is Holy Spirit, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, three separate persons, all in one. And so God makes marriage as a picture of what he himself is like. Marriage is so important for your benefit, but also to give the world a glimpse of what God himself is like. That no other relationship you will ever have on earth is designed to last like your marriage is. There is no other relationship that God wants that has more importance in terms of human relationships than your relationship between you and your spouse. You see, jobs, they're going to come and go in your lifetime. Friendships, they're going to come and go too. Some are going to move away. You're going to change churches. You're going to change hobbies. You're going to move to different houses. And the kids, well, the kids are going to leave home. At least you hope they're going to leave home. But your marriage relationship is the one thing that is designed to last till the very last breath you take on this earth. Marriage is a big deal. And we want to make sure that we don't lose sight of our marriages when it comes time to trying to raise our kids. I like to think of it like this. Marriage is a little bit like a retirement savings plan. The sooner that you start investing in it, the more there is for later in life, and you don't have to work so hard to catch up. So if you're a young man who's watching this tonight, and maybe you're newly married or you're just about to have kids, I want to say to you, don't lose sight of your marriage when the kids come along, because you need to keep investing in your marriage now, and it'll pay huge rewards, huge dividends for you later on in your life. So I'm going to give you some really practical ways that as kids come along, some 4 ways that you can keep your marriage growing during this season of your life, how you navigate being a great dad and a great husband all at the exact same time. So 4 ways you can keep your marriage growing. First way is this. You need to live with your wife in an understanding way. 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 7 tells us that we are supposed to live with her in an understanding way, that we need to be men who take the time to seek to understand the pressure that our wife is feeling. And then to say, are there ways that I can lift that pressure from her, that I can remove those things that she's experiencing that are causing her stress right now? So here's some questions that you can ask your wife, just to be able to understand where she's at and what she's experiencing right now. Ask her questions like, what's your greatest stress point right now? Or what is it that makes you really come alive? What makes you feel happy and satisfied? What challenges are you facing emotionally, spiritually, physically? And here's a really important one. How can I pray for you? And then think about how can you do something in response to those needs. Seeking to understand her and where she's at is going to tell her that you genuinely care for her. You are making deposits into her life when you decide to show that you are seeking to understand her. When our kids were younger, Shannon, my wife, was having just a really overwhelming season in her life. And I could tell she was really feeling stretched and stressed. And I remember asking her one day, what can I do? Like, what is one thing that is going on that is causing you the most stress that you just don't like having to deal with? And she said, one of those things was just mopping the floors in our house. That we have a bunch of hardwood floors. And she said, just the time and the energy, I just don't like mopping the floors in our house. Well, now, do you think I really wanted to mop floors? No, I didn't really want to mop floors, but I love my wife. And so as a way of understanding her and showing her that I understood her, I decided that I would take on the role of making sure all the floors in the house got mopped. It sounds so simple, but guys, it pays huge rewards when you just make those kinds of simple investments into understanding her and following through on that. Here's a second way that you can keep your marriage going when kids come along. Take some time to really nourish her heart. Ephesians chapter 5, verse 29 teaches us that that's what we're supposed to do, that we're to nourish and cherish our wives. And some of you guys are thinking, like, I'm not really good at nourishing or nurturing anything. And I would say to you, you're way better at it than you give yourself credit for, because I've seen some of your trucks and I've seen some of your front yards. I know that a man can nourish and cherish anything that he wants to nourish. You just have to decide to put the energy into it. And so here's how you do that with your wife. Do things to find out what it looks like to help her know how much you value her. What are the little things that you can do that communicate to her how much you value her? My wife was going through a serious health issue a number of years ago, and I did not know what to do. I had no clue how to help her. And I prayed about it, and I asked God, show me, what can I do to help her? And God gave me a really practical thing that every day I was going to text my wife a Bible verse. A Bible verse that would just be meant to encourage her, to remind her of God's faithfulness, remind her of God's power. And I did that every single day, a different Bible verse. I kept a list on my phone of all the Bible verses that I sent to her. And every day, a different Bible verse for months. Now, I'm not telling you that because I'm so smart. I'm telling you that I just asked God for wisdom of something I could do to help me to see how I could nourish and cherish my wife. And that was something that God showed to me. So you want to do whatever it looks like to make sure that your wife feels like she's the most important person in your life. I don't know what that's going to look like for her, but you want to ask God for help, and you want to be able to find those little things that you can do to communicate that message to her. A third thing that you really need to do is make sure that you're doing your part to be spiritual leader in your family. Ephesians chapter 6, verse 4 says that we as fathers are to raise up our children in the nurture and admonition, or to understand the ways of God. That it's on us as dads to take some initiative spiritually with our kids. That you should not leave it all to your wife to do everything spiritually, that you partner together as husband and wife to invest in the spiritual formation of your kids. When you communicate to your wife that you want to be a part of things spiritually, it will mean the world to her. She may not feel all alone anymore in these kinds of moments. When you decide that you're going to pray with your kids, or you're going to read the Bible story at night, or you're going to help your kids memorize Bible verses before they have to go back to their kids program, whatever it is you need to do in that front, what you are communicating to your wife is, I'm with you in raising our kids together to love Jesus. And that is a huge deposit that you can make into her life. There are so many women who feel like they're all alone in raising their kids spiritually. And so if you just take some small steps to begin to invest spiritually in the lives of your kids, it will make all the difference in the world. One of the steps that I learned to take, and it was time consuming, I'll be honest with you, but our kids were in a kids program at church that required a ton of memorizing Bible verses. And I would spend hours with our little kids every week helping them to memorize Bible verses. And just the message that communicated, not only to my kids, but to my wife, was huge. So show her how much you value her by saying you want to partner in the spiritual formation of your kids. And then the fourth thing that you can do to keep investing in your wife is invest in your marriage intentionally. Matthew chapter 19, verse 5, Jesus repeats what Genesis says about marriage. And he says, leave your father and mother and hold fast to your wife. And it's just this picture of making your marriage a priority, that you put other things to the side to say, I'm going to invest in my marriage relationship. That pursuing your wife and continuing to pursue her heart matters. That you need to find ways to keep dating her, to keep loving her, to keep showing her respect and affection, whatever it looks like. To invest in her life is an investment in your marriage. So here's what it looked like for us. Twice a year, we made sure to go away for a weekend. And we would leave our kids with grandparents or with a babysitter, and we would just go away, get a hotel room, or go away to a retreat center or something. But twice a year, once for our anniversary, once around Christmas time, and go away together. Now you might say, man, that gets expensive after a while. And I want to say to you, it's not an expense, it's an investment. Don't look at the money that you're going to spend on your marriage as being an expense. Look at it as an investment into your future. And then in addition to going away a couple times a year, we also made sure that once a month we did a date night where we just got out of the house. And then on top of that, we had one of the best pieces of advice I ever received came from Focus on the Family Canada. And we were at a marriage event with them one night, and they said, make sure that every night after dinner, you spend 20 minutes, just you and your spouse connecting with each other, finding out what's going on in your day, how your day was, talking about logistics that you need to talk about, whatever that looks like. But spend time together, connected in this kind of way where you are investing in each other. And you might say, man, that's hard to do because my kids are young and they're always in front of us and they're always pulling us in every direction. Well, here's what you need to do. You need to make sure that even your kids know that she is your priority. I have one of the former presidents of Promise Keepers Canada. He told me a story one time I will always remember, and that is he would date his wife once a week, and their kids were around all the time, and they would always send their kids into their bedrooms early so that they could just have a date night kind of in their living room because they didn't have any money to go out. And one night, one of the sons said, "Oh, are you hanging out with her again?" And the dad called the son over and said, "Son, she's the woman I love. You're just the fruit of our love. Now go to your room." Now, it's a funny story, but it's such a great story because it immediately communicates to the kids, we love you, but we love each other even more. We're committed to each other as a husband and a wife, even more than we're committed to you as parents. And that's an incredibly important message for kids to understand and to see and experience the love and commitment that you have for each other and the investment you're willing to make in your marriage relationship. Now, I want to say, if you find yourself in a spot where parenthood has challenged your marriage, I want to encourage you, just name the elephant in the room together as a couple. Be honest with each other. And then work together to identify what you can change so that your marriage can become a greater priority. Now, a lot of people will say to me, Kirk, I don't have the time for this. I don't have the time to be able to do this because my life is so busy already. How can I possibly have the time to handle these things and add all these extra layers into my life? Well, first of all, I want to say this. Most of us are not as busy as we think we are. Did you know that the average guy spends 8 hours a week playing video games and 24 hours a week watching television? We're not nearly as busy as we think we are. But here's some things you may need to do to create time. All of us have the same number of hours in a day. You may need to be the first one out of bed every morning, and then make sure that you go to bed at the same time as each other, because that's another opportunity for you to talk and pray together at the end of the day. And just make sure that you are scheduling that kind of time to be together. And I know that as Christians, especially, we feel the tension of time because there's so many things vying for our attention, friendships and spiritual growth and church responsibilities and keeping our family in a good place. And yeah, it's true that friendships change when you have kids and you have less time to hang out with friends. But I want to say that finding time to build friendships and grow spiritually are really important. And my wife and I have made it a regular habit to make sure we're in a small group together. And so we're building friendships with other couples, but also growing spiritually at the same time. So we're able to dovetail some things together. And remember, a babysitter is not an expense, it's an investment. Guys, listen, if you're married, being a husband is your primary calling in life. And it is the primary place that you're going to find out how you need to be more like Jesus. There is no Bible study I've ever taken. There's no sermon I've ever listened to. There's no event I've ever attended that has impacted my life more than being married has. Marriage, it's not the end goal of your life. Being a disciple of Jesus is the end goal of your life. Becoming more like Jesus is the end goal and purpose of your life. Because even marriage comes to an end. But marriage is the one place where you have to look yourself in the mirror day in and day out as a man and see how far you've come and how much further you still have to go and becoming more like Jesus. And so here's one final word for you. If you are married with kids, always remember that the stress and the tension and the challenges you're facing, this is a season of your life. So invest in this season wisely, live in the moment wisely, while taking action to invest in your future as a married couple. I'm going to bring Dean back in. We're going to have a little bit of a Q&A time. I would love to hear some of your questions and the opportunity to interact with some of you guys on this topic, as it's just such an important message and time for us as men.
Kirk, thanks so much. This is amazing information. It's great on just a theoretical sense, but just a really practical sense as well. I know even personally for my wife, Kelly, and I, like, we're at that similar stage as you are, and our kids are growing, and we're soon looking at being empty nesters, and we're realizing, you know what, at some point it's just going to be the two of us here, and we're realizing more and more the value of investing in us. And I can't say we did that always well, because when the kids came along, we had four. There were times that, that was the focus of our lives. So the first question comes to mind is, for the couple that their children have become the center of their universe, as it were, where can they start just to, just to detangle that a little bit and start putting the priority in the right places?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think you start by taking stock of where you're at. And so ask yourself questions like, how much time and how much money are we investing in our kids and their activities? And then take a step back from that and say, do we really need to be doing all of these things? How can we create some margin in our life so that there's space for us to invest in us as a couple and not only in our children? You should keep investing in your children. I'm not at all saying you should step away from investing in your kids. Your kids are very important. They need you to invest in their life. But I would say create some margin. So practically for us, what that looked like is we limited our kids to only one outside activity at a time. And then we also made sure that we budgeted money every month for us to be able to go on dates. That it wasn't, let's see if we have any money left over to be able to go out together. It was, no, this is just part of our reality of living, is we're going to make sure we have some money. So evaluate where you're at, and then have some honest conversations as a husband and wife and say, what can we begin to adjust from our current reality to create some margin and space in our life to invest in each other?
Oh, that's good. That's really good. For the couple that this has become a bit of a conflict moment, it's a bit of a tension point now. Where can they start to begin to regain focus as a team?
Yeah, I think this is a really huge point, because what we often do when we're feeling the conflict is we don't feel like much of a team. We feel like we're on different wavelengths and different pages, right? And so unintentionally, our spouse starts to feel like the enemy in those moments, because we feel like our spouse has a different set of values than we have around this. And so here's a couple things that I would say. First of all, always remember this: your spouse is not the enemy. There's one enemy for your marriage. His name's the devil, and he's out to destroy your marriage. Your spouse is not the enemy. Your spouse may be believing messages from the enemy, but your spouse is not the enemy. So change your perception and perspective of who the real enemy is. And then have an honest conversation. I know Shannon and I have had at times where we've been at conflict with each other, where it took one of us to actually look the other in the eye and say, look at what the devil's trying to do to us right now. We need to stop treating each other like the enemy, and we need to be able to now pray about this together and acknowledge the fact that, hey, we want something better for our marriage, and invite God to come in and be in control of your relationship. And then once you've spent that time praying together and being honest about it, then you can start to have open dialogue and communication around, like, what are you seeing? What are you experiencing? How do we help things to become better together? That you are a team trying to build something. If you are going at this, and here's one of the mistakes that some men can make. Some men can become very passive, and so their wife is frustrated. There's also the other side where there's the guys who like want to fix everything in their marriage, and their wife is getting frustrated. And I would just say, like, understand which guy you are, and then also understand that no matter which guy you are, you probably either have to turn it up a few notches to show your wife you care, or turn it down a few notches and show some grace to your wife and understanding of where she's at and some of the stresses and strains that she's feeling.
Oh, that's good. For the husband and wife, and they want to have children, have not had children yet, but what can we do as husbands to set the family culture and the values and priorities even before children arrive on the scene? What are some things we can do to prepare the way, as it were, so that our marriages stay healthy?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I think a couple of things, and I'll be honest, I did not do any of this well before kids came along. We were really young when our kids came along. We were only married for 2 years, I think, when our first kid came along. So everything was kind of, the world was flying by quickly. So I am not speaking as the guy who figured this out completely, but I do think a couple of things we can do. One is, set the culture for you and your wife that says that the most important thing for you is, first of all, to make sure you honor God in your marriage. That if you create a family, you create a home that says we live to honor God. That very nature of living to honor God will actually connect down to, because we want to honor God, we want to make sure we are building and maintaining a strong marriage. And because you understand how important marriage is to God. So I would say create that culture from day one that, we're going to keep investing in each other. We're going to make sure we're honoring God. We're going to do the things God wants us to do with our lives. We're going to be connected in a community of faith. We're going to pray together as a husband and wife. And I know that for some guys, this is really awkward. Like, praying with your spouse is something that you're not good at, and you're a little nervous. You're afraid you're going to fail at it. And when we think we're going to fail, we just don't even try a lot of times. So I would just say, like, if you feel a little nervous about praying with your wife, start with something as simple as one night a week. Ask your wife one question and say, what's one thing I can do to pray for you this week? What's one thing that you have going on this week that I can pray for you about? And listen to her and let her identify one thing. And then just take whatever it is, 30 seconds, 60 seconds, and right there on the spot, just pray for that one thing and ask God to come into that one place. And you'll be amazed at how it connects you in intimacy spiritually with each other, and also how you will get used to praying for her. And it will begin a normal rhythm for you to be able to pray for her.
Oh, it's so good. Just the importance of praying for each other and with each other. Those are game changers inside of marriages. So for the guy who is, they're in that stage where the children are around and life is hectic and the job is busy and he's not taking care of himself, and it's like the oxygen mask on the airplane scenario that you need to put it on first. But if he's not putting the oxygen mask on first, where can he start to get himself healthy and to be in the right place so he can look after those that are around him?
So most people don't know this, but at one time when I was working for Promise Keepers, I weighed about 270 pounds. I was extremely overweight. because I was traveling all over the country and nobody taught me how to eat on the road. And Dean, you and I have talked a little bit about those realities of, man, you can go to one restaurant and have one meal and eat your entire calories for a day in half of that meal, never mind the whole thing. It's wild. And so I put on all kinds of weight early in our marriage and when our kids were young. And I had a moment where my son drew a picture of our family, and it was all these stick figures. And in the middle of the picture was what looked like the Michelin Tire Man. And I was like, well, who's that? And he said, well, that's you, Daddy. And I was like, oh no, I didn't realize I'd even gotten that overweight and was not taking care of my own physical health. And two things struck me. One, boy, my son sees me like this. And the second thing that hit me was, I want to be able to live long enough to walk my daughter down the aisle. And if I keep going down the path I'm going down, I'm going to die before I ever get the chance. So it was a real wake-up call moment for me. I really had to do some soul searching. And honestly, guys, here's the bottom line of what it takes. It just takes discipline. It takes the courage to acknowledge the things that need to change in your life, and then to begin to build those things one at a time, one routine, one habit at a time, to begin to make the changes. For me, it was about beginning to change how I ate food, first of all, and then beginning to exercise regularly. But set one goal. You become really overwhelmed when you try to do 15 things at once. If you try to set too many goals for your life, you'll be overwhelmed and you won't be able to do any of them. So just set one step you can take, one goal you can make to be able to make sure you're investing in your own health, physically and spiritually, both. And then take the next 2 months and just make it a habit in your life, so that at the end of 2 months, you're not even thinking about it anymore. It's just a normal part of your life. But don't try to do everything all at once. Pick one thing you need to do to begin to invest in your life and begin to do it.
That is such good advice. Sometimes when we get in these positions and things are spiraling out of control, or we're not where we need to be, we don't know where to begin. And sometimes it's just beginning with the next right thing to do.
Yeah.
And one thing at a time, and it's the little incremental changes that over time make all the difference. And the worst thing we can do is not do anything. So just do one thing, like you said, and that will lead you on the path to significant change. And that applies to, your physical health, your eating habits, but also to your habits in your relationship and your communication. And it's so good. For the dad who's really never taken that leadership role in his marriage or in his family with his children, and feels like, I've let the family down, or I must be such a disappointment. Where can he start to turn things around? Where's a good place just to begin?
Yeah, that's such a great question, because honestly, I don't think I've ever met a Christian man who has said to me, yep, I've nailed it as a spiritual leader in my family. I think all of us look ourselves in the mirror and we kind of go, oh man, did I ever screw that up? And we have regrets of things that we've missed and made mistakes on. So if you're feeling that way, the first thing I want to say to you is, you are not alone. Every other Christian man I've ever met has felt the exact same way, including me. And I also want to say this before I directly answer your question. Sometimes we look at our kids and we react in the moment. And so we see our kids make a decision and we start to go, man, I must have really messed up as a spiritual leader, because my kids wouldn't do this if I would have been a proper spiritual leader. And you got to understand that, like, your kids also sin. and that's not always your fault. Like, they make their choices, and they have to live with some of the consequences of their own decisions. So, be careful with some of that. Understand that there are seasons when it comes to raising your kids, and you're going to go through those seasons as a dad. But I would also say that if you're in that spot and you go, I haven't done anything to invest spiritually in my family, and I don't even know where to begin. Honestly, I think the best place that you should be, well, here's the one thing you shouldn't do. Do not go to your family tonight or tomorrow and say, starting tonight, I am going to be the spiritual leader of this family. That is like the worst thing you can do, because you're setting yourself up for failure. You're like immediately telling your family that I'm going to be like this big spiritual giant. And you and I both know that you have a ways to go to develop that skill and that habit in your life. So don't set yourself up for failure, but begin to identify that one thing. So again, if you're looking at starting from scratch, the place to start from scratch is simply by spending that one time a week to pray for your wife. Build that spiritual connection, that spiritual bond for her and with her. And then the second thing that I would say is, let your kids see you making spiritual life a habit. Like going to church. If you don't go to church on a regular basis, get the family up on Sunday morning and say to the family, we're going to church together. Just begin to take those things, those initial steps, where you are showing the family this is what's important. And some of the other stuff, it can come. If you have young kids and you're reading Bible stories to them at night, or your wife's reading Bible stories, ask one night, hey, can I read the story tonight? And after you have to pick your wife up off the floor from fainting, I'm sure she's going to say, yes, go ahead and read the Bible story tonight. But again, just identify that one next step that you can take, and take it. Don't try to do everything all at once.
Oh, that's good. Sometimes we compartmentalize our spiritual lives and our discipleship from parenting and our marriages. And I think that's one of the biggest flaws. And you alluded to that. Marriage is an extension of our discipleship. It's how we grow in Christ and how we grow together in Christ. Kirk, I want to say a huge thank you for joining us tonight. Like, this has been really practical and such good advice. It's so real-time conversation, even for us, as I said. And the reality is, when children come along, they are such joys and blessings to our lives, but they are there for those seasons, and we must invest in the partner that God has placed in our lives, who will be there for the rest of our lives. And I've seen so many people miss that mark and regret it. And we have an opportunity to change that and invest in our marriages now, so that both parenting and marriage can be healthy at the same time.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, it's been great. So thanks, Kirk. It's been great to have you on board tonight and talking with you. This wisdom is real life stuff, and I know it's really practical for us and for our homes as well. Where can we find out more about what you're doing and track with you a little bit?
I am now co-lead pastor at Forward Church, which is a multi-site church in Waterloo Region in Ontario. Having a blast doing it. So you can check us out at forwardchurch.ca or on our YouTube channel at Forward Church. And also still doing a little bit of writing for Impactus. Love doing that and being able to be part of the ministry that way. So a number of articles on leadership and men's ministry on the Impactus website. You can check those out as well.
Yes, and thank you for doing that. For those that are watching or will see this replay, you can learn lots more about marriage and parenting through the resources that we have online at impactus.org. And Kirk, you've been a regular contributor, and we thank you for that. And so check those resources out. There's always new content there, and we'd welcome you into that space to to see what we have there for you and what God has there for you. So to all the viewers tonight, thank you for joining us. I hope this has been helpful, practical, and spiritual. Hopefully it's been a blessing to you. And may God bless you this evening, and have a great night. And again, thank you for joining us.